AOIA, today's June 6th meeting of the Smart Cities and Service Improvements Committee is now in session. We have a council member in the back, so we're going to go ahead and start review of work plan, but we can't vote on stuff, right?
No, that's what I said.
Oh, all right. Let's go ahead and start the presentations then. Go ahead and get us going. We'll circle back. Oh, well, never mind.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum now. One comment. Today, 3 council members at least will have to aspire to be somewhere at 4:30 at the VTA board meeting. Yes. Although, and then Councilmember Davis has to leave at 2:30. So let's keep it short, folks. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the work plan?
So moved. Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Any opposed? No. That passes. All right. On to the next thing. No consent calendar. Go ahead and presentations, please.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee, members of the public and city staff. Dolan Beckel here, Director of the Office of Civic Innovation, joined in the front box by Smart City Manager Reggie Nair. Our Deputy City Manager, Kip Harkness, extends his regrets. He literally was thrown off a horse last weekend and is at home recovering as we speak. It was not a discussion with Dave or Jennifer. He literally got thrown off a horse and he's at home recovering, but he's in good spirits and good shape. So let's walk through our agenda. We're going to start off with an update, our usual update on the Smart City Roadmap. We're going to next move on to a privacy policy update report. We're going to give an update on My San Jose. We're going to talk about the status of the integrated permitting system. And last but not least, we're going to give an update on the Facebook YouTube live pilot. I'd have to say that I'm sure the committee will be glad to hear that we're not going to have any Smart City quizzes. The infotainment today is going to be twofold. First of all, we're going to get a demonstration of some of the new IPS geographic information system capabilities. And secondly, we're going to get a short video during the My San Jose update. So having said that, and intending to move quickly today, we'll move on to our first report on the Smart City Roadmap by Reggie Nair.
Thank you, Dolan. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and public. My name is Reggie Nair, and I'm the Smart City Manager for Civic Innovation Team. As you recall, the approved Smart City Roadmap that we presented to the committee and members of the public back in March is our baseline to show our progress as these projects move towards green and eventually to completion. Where we are for the month of June, we are making more progress in a positive direction in executing these projects. The 6 projects that are circled on the slide are the ones that have a change in status. Data strategy moved from red to green. Autonomous vehicle first and last mile moved from green to yellow. Safe city strategy moved from red to green. City open data environment moved from green to red. Advanced cybersecurity products and service RFP moved from red to green, yellow. And community engagement through data moved from yellow to green. Later in the presentation, I'll share the corrective course of actions taken for the projects that are currently red or have changed from red. Seeing our performance through these bar charts over the past months, it shows that we are making incremental progress towards a positive direction. Also, I am seeing how departments are adopting the mindset of the traffic light status approach to assess progress with these projects. The roadmap has been an instrumental tool to help departments focus and, more importantly, allows project leads to be transparent and accountable. And leading in this example, I want to specifically thank 2 folks, R.T. Tangri from IT and Jill North from DOT, who have been proactive in identifying the status, even though not favorable, because they recognize the challenges in contract negotiations that they were dealing with their vendors that would impact their overall project delivery. So for the month of June, there are 20 projects, about 53%, that are now green status. 12 projects, about 31%, are yellow status, and now 5 projects, about 13, are red, with 1 project, 3%, remaining gray because it's on hold. The committee and the members of the public can refer to the overall change of status for ease of future reference shown on the right side of this slide. In the next few slides, I will focus only on those projects of red status and share what's changed and the corrective course of actions that will be taken for the month of June to get these projects back on track. The next few slides will be highlighting the 5 projects that are at risk and 2 projects getting back on track. So for reference, items highlighted in purple indicates what has changed since last month's meeting. Integrated permitting system. The project remains red until council approves to amend contract with the vendor on June 25th. However, later in today's meeting, you will hear all the great stride the team is making to get this project on track. My San Jose, this project remains red. However, the team is making great efforts to hire key personnel to help move this project forward. And I can officially say that Herman Sedona has started on Monday, so he's here in the audience, so really want to thank that team. Also, you'll hear more in-depth presentation about the project later today. IT infrastructure modernization. The contract is taking longer than expected due to the complexity in establishing 4 to 5 different agreements. However, Finance anticipates to submit a final draft of the contract in June for the vendor to review. At this time, no council actions are anticipated. City open data environment. The project is experiencing delays due to negotiations with the vendor and is taking longer than expected. Finance is working closely with the vendor to help get this finalized this month. Access Eastside. The city and the Eastside Union High School District staff met in mid-May to move forward with the next phase of the Access Eastside at Overfelt High School, which will be fully funded by Eastside Union High School District. Our next steps for this project is to understand a baseline for uptime of Wi-Fi at James Lick in collaboration with our partners at Silicon Valley Talent Partnership and PayPal. And also, we will seek council's approval to amend an existing agreement that we have with Weve in August 2019. So, advanced cybersecurity RFP. The good news, last month, we issued the RFP, and the project has moved from red to yellow status. Data strategy. The Fuse Fellow program has been instrumental in helping the city of San Jose find a data strategy officer. Currently, we're in the discovery phase with main focus to seek Bloomberg certification. So this project has moved from red to green status. The projects that are shaded in gray, which are a total of about 18 projects, will be the next wave of projects that will become active on the Smart City Roadmap this coming fall. There are some additional projects that are not shaded, and they're still awaiting budget approval and confirmation through the budget process. So potentially more can come. So just stay tuned. So once a budget is officially approved and the project team contract has been confirmed, these projects will be part of the roadmap update in the fall. Oops, sorry. Oops. Oop, a little flicky. Okay. When we introduced the 2-pipeline approach for the big rocks and small wonders, it allowed a separate pathway to deliver small wonder projects that are time-boxed and help the city get ready for the future. One of the successes we were pleasantly surprised was the implementation of the Startup and Residence Program. 4 out of the 8 projects that you see before you allowed the city to demonstrate a product through a competitive procurement process. And once the proof of concept was deemed acceptable, the city could enter into a contract with the vendor. However, on the flip side, we recognize that the small wonder projects that were identified on the previous slide were more inward focused and primarily supported operational efficiencies. Also, the vendors that wanted to pilot their products with the city were mainly of IoT types projects that typically has taken longer than 1 year based upon our experience. So moving forward with Small Wonders, we want to incorporate and prioritize a community-centered Small Wonders challenge approach. This will focus on creating a greater impact to our residents and community, provide an opportunity to seek solutions from vendors based on what our residents and community needs, and finally, it will provide more visibility and create more opportunity to communicate to the public and tech industry what are the city's innovation principles. So we've shared this list of challenges at our last meeting that focus on the community benefit and that it's more outward focus. The 2 challenges highlighted in gray are focused on IT solutions, as I mentioned before. We have not been very successful to deploy these types of solutions in a short time frame. However, we are open for vendors who may have solutions that can be expedited. We will be collaborating with the departments to further refine or add more to these challenges. that has a community benefit focus and create a prioritized list for future use. So to ensure the success in executing these small wonder projects within a year, we collaborated with the Mayor's Office of Technology and Innovation to create a detailed implementation plan that is broken down into 5 key stages to help keep these projects on track. The first stage is finalize. As you can see, first and foremost, we will need to hire a small wonders manager. Once hired, we will need to collaborate with the departments to refine and prioritize 3 to 5 challenges. Then determine the value proposition of these challenges for both the city and potential vendors so it is successful for scaling. We are exploring the option to create matching funds that was included in the Mayor's June budget message to help with executing these challenges to scale. Seeking fundings upfront will help support departments to execute the contracts for these challenges. Second, planning. We need to finalize sourcing strategies to have the RFP process upfront through a public process by using either startup in residence or in a similar type of program. The goal at this stage is to finalize the scope of work and to identify staffing, and an example would be through the Innovators Academy, so that we have resources in place to help finalize the RFP. Third is launch. It is important to spread the word by launching the communication and media plan. First and foremost, it keeps our community engaged. Also, it inspires tech industry to participate solving on these civic issues together through the city's procurement process, where we have the opportunity to evaluate, select, and enter into contract with a potential vendor. To ensure the success of these projects, a project charter will need to be established to understand roles and responsibility with the project team and vendor. Fourth is execute. After all that planning, we finally get to do the fun part, where we create a minimum viable product solution, where we have an opportunity to demo the product at no additional cost to the city. And once deemed successful, we can enter into a contract and get ready to scale. And lastly is evaluate and celebrate. This is an opportunity where we can share our findings to the committee and members of the public to celebrate the successes or lessons learned in delivering these small wonders challenges. So before I conclude my presentation, I want to personally thank all the teams throughout the city departments, and a lot of them are here today, who have been committed to executing the projects that are on the Smart City Roadmap, and also upholding the transparency and the accountability that's required, because it's not easy. I mean, we have, and it's just hard, and there's no boilerplate for them to follow, so I just want to personally thank them for that. And this concludes my presentation. I'm going to pass this to Dylan.
Great, thanks, Reggie. There's just a couple projects I want to call out because they've been long in duration and they've made some major strides forward in the past month, but it may not have been clear. So for our Access East Side, which is now providing 6,000 households in the James Lick coverage area, free Wi-Fi at home. For that project, we met with Chris Funk, the superintendent, and a CTO, Randy Phelps, and we have agreement to move forward with the Overfelt school district. We're already starting that planning, and the school district will be fully funding the implementation and the maintenance, and then the challenge is on the team to figure out Yerba Buena. But this has been almost 2 years in the making, and we're excited to have James Lick up and running and have a commitment to move forward with Overfelt. That two combined schools basically encompasses the whole Alum Rock, which means we can now look to other schools who may want to feed on this and contribute capital and expand to those homes as well. So we're really excited about that. Secondly, and my personal selfish favorite is our broadband strategy. Yesterday, Root Metrics, who's one of the leading evaluators of broadband speeds, published their annual report on California, and the headline was, City of San Jose makes remarkable strides in mobile coverage. Speed gains across the board in San Jose are helping change the landscape. In fact, with all carriers recording median download speeds above 30 megabits for the first time in San Jose now outpaces San Francisco in this round of testing. So, so score 2 for the hybrid strategy. So having said that, that ends this part of the presentation. Turn it back, Chair, to you for questions.
Vice Mayor Jones.
Just one question, and that was on at least one of the slides, if not multiple slides. There were questions about being able to recruit and hire. Can you kind of give us a little bit more detail in terms of some of those challenges and what possibly we can do to support the effort to hire and recruit qualified individuals?
Yeah, so I think probably the challenge was just the elapsed time from when the idea of the need comes to when we can actually, when the budget's approved and we can actually post the posting. So I think that one of the key resources we want to get on board is the Small Wonders manager, so that we can begin pushing forward those challenges with speed and make sure we're aligned to the schedule of STIR and with the departments. Secondly, we're going to find that obviously we need more resources in privacy, and as soon as the budget's approved, that will also give us the funding to move forward, not only with a better approach to working out our privacy policy, but get additional resources on board. So I think at this point, the major challenge ahead of us is the actual just timing of getting the budget approved. And once that's done, we have a number of resources we'll be able to move forward with. And then certainly the actual expertise that we're looking for, the combination of kind of business development folks and technical folks is a difficult challenge. And I think probably what we could do is ask the committee and the council to help us in promoting these opportunities through social media and reaching out to potential candidates who want to come back and give service to the city.
I don't have the particular slide in front of me, but there was one slide that actually referenced there were two potential candidates that we weren't able to hire due to market conditions, which I interpret as being, competitive salaries or.
Got it. Yeah. So those two positions, that was we have for a while recognized the need to better leverage data to make decisions. And with the somewhat distributed IT environment that we have, both centralized and distributed, we've been looking for quite a while to find someone to fill the role of a chief data officer within the city. We had two failed recruitments, largely due to compensation. And so the avenue we turned to was to use the Fuse Fellowship, and I think Srini Upaluri, who is in the audience, he's not going to stand up because his back is not in a much better position than Kip's is right now, but we were able to bring him in for a Fuse Fellowship to help us fill that role of a chief data officer, and the primary goal of that is working through the Bloomberg certification so that we can achieve a level where the amount of grants that we are eligible for and apply for will increase. And it just so worked out that the Bloomberg criteria that we failed the most on was our data governance and our data strategy. So Srini is going to be spending most of his time improving our data governance and data strategy, and at the same time getting us through the Bloomberg Silver, Gold, Platinum certification process.
Great, thank you for that. And it seems like you got more people going down faster than the Warriors are right now. So.
Is that the pigskin? Is that the oval one or the? No, okay, never mind.
Mayor Liccardo.
At 2, Vice Mayor. All right, so Toronto fans among us. Anyway, first I just want to say thanks to you, Rajni. Thank you very much, Dolan, for all your work and your team's great work. And I just want to encourage and urge you, as you identify, as you've seen here, 2 unsuccessful recruitments. I very much get the fact we got a challenging market to hire in right now, and there should be communication back to the council saying we need to reclassify, right? There should be, and I understand you've got a process, you got to go through a city manager and all that, but I just want to encourage you to use that process because we've done it in the past, and we recognize there's a lot of work that's getting held up right now because we've got a small number of really hardworking people who are doing too much, and we need to get more folks on board. So please use that and nudge us accordingly if we can help. I was a little concerned that the AV strategy had moved from green to yellow, and I'd heard that there was maybe a bit of a delay on finalizing the Mercedes contract and perhaps not others as well, that we have not yet seen other companies move forward. I understand Intel was close, but now they've refocused. And I'm just really concerned because I know we've got grant funding there. I'm concerned for lots of reasons. Obviously, we want to get this, we want to make great things happen with this. Jill, thank you. We obviously want to make great things happen. We want to be a city that's prepared for whatever may come in the future, and we think this will help. But also because I know we've got commitments to go with those grants. And I would much, much rather for all of us to say at some point, if we feel like this is just not going to happen, then we find a way to negotiate with Knight about how they get their money back. I would much rather do that than string them along and have them find out that we're not executing. And so can you give me a sense about how we're going to be able to move forward, just given the considerable delays in the program?
Yes. So the reasoning behind moving the autonomous vehicle pilot with Mercedes from green to yellow was because we had a timeline of executing the demonstration project agreement by May. And by doing that, we would be able to go into our community meetings in June and July. I've been told by both Mercedes and our own city attorney's office that it is literally on its final revision that they're going through at this point and just fixing dates, and then it should be ready for signature, but it didn't meet that initial timeline of being signed by May, so that's why I moved it to yellow. But
Okay.
In terms of the vehicles are testing, they're driving the route to and from right now. I think I've seen several pictures of folks taking pictures of the vehicles. So everything else is moving. It's just that community engagement, the meetings that we would like to be an agenda item on, those are going to be delayed a little bit, so it'll be closer to when the launch of the service starts in August.
Okay. And then what about the rest of the industry? What are we hearing?
Yeah, so we have AutoX lined up. We've actually identified the route for AutoX. That would be from Dearden to actually right out here. That would serve potentially faculty and staff and students, kind of replicating the dash route. So we are moving that forward. We've started coordinating with San Jose State University about what's the best approach, start reeling folks in and the timing and all those types of things. So still continuing to scope that out a little bit further, before we turn it over and start really getting to the point where we're getting signatures for those agreements as well.
Do we have a sort of a target launch date for that?
Fall, it's still September-ish.
Okay.
It's kind of what, and I say that very kind of, it kind of depends. We're talking about 2 to 3 vehicles, and it would probably be very incremental, starting with staff, seeing how that goes.
Sure.
Bringing more folks in, and then if there's an interest, maybe possibly business owners in the downtown community as well, or
Yeah.
so that will grow.
Okay. And I appreciate that, we do need to go slow. Obviously, there's a lot at stake in terms of safety, because as long as we're going, that's
Yes.
the important thing. And Jill, I know you've been pulled into a role now where you're taking on a lot more than this. And I guess that's, part of the general concern, which is just that, I get the sense that resources are being pulled from this project in different ways.
Yes.
And, we do have commitments, and I want to make sure that we're being really a fair broker with those who are committing resources to us. So appreciate all that you're doing. I know you're trying to do a lot right now, and
Yes.
please
and
let us know. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, you're absolutely right. I anticipated that, and so there was that time where there was some in between. I actually have Sahiti Persala with me today, who I brought on to kind of help out and to continue to move the autonomous vehicle program forward for that specific reason, making
Great.
sure that doesn't lose any traction.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jill. Appreciate
you.
it. And then on the website, I think it's gone, I think we're at yellow. But I'm just wondering how yellow, or is it turning orange?
Yeah, I have Rosario, our
Thank you,
Director of
Rosario.
Communications, coming down.
Yeah, we are really eager because I know even on my own communications team, we're trying to get a lot of content up, and we can't do anything until we know there's a transition. So when can we expect a transition?
Good afternoon. Rosario Naves, Director of Communication. So, yes, you're right. The website has been in yellow for several months now. We are delayed on the project schedule, and we are increasing the project scope at this time. One of the reasons for the delays for the project schedule is the project manager was poached by the city of Santa Clara, and so we lost our project manager in early March timeframe. So, with the support and assistance of a couple of the other teams in the organization, namely the Office of Civic Innovation and the Information Technology Department, we are moving through some of those resource challenges. At the same time, we completed our beta testing in March timeframe, and we had a lot of lessons learned through beta. We realized that we needed to conduct some more usability work on the site, as well as some testing to ensure that we are launching a site that is fully functional and that also is meeting our residents' expectations and goals. So I do think that it's worth us stepping back a little bit, doing that usability work, bringing on the new resources, evaluating the project scope, and taking that side step so that we can ensure that the project or the product that we launch does meet residents' needs and does put our best foot forward, because this is our digital front door. So I don't have an estimated go live date at this time. Me and the team, we all are working together to evaluate the revised launch plan. We are putting the finishing touches on that implementation plan, and then I will be communicating with the full council on when that expected go live date is ready to be finalized and communicated to you all.
When do you expect to be able to announce a start date?
It's a go live date to the public?
To us?
Oh,
yeah, I mean, I just
in the
want to
next-
understand what the plan and sort of
Sure.
what the path is.
Yeah, so we're actually putting those final touches on the implementation plan, so I can be communicating that as soon as early next week.
Okay, great. And then we'll have a date to shoot for
Yes.
and hopefully exceed. Okay. Thank you, Rosario.
Thanks.
And I'm really glad that we've got a few fellow on board. Welcome, and we look forward to making great things happen. So thank you.
All right, with that, can I get a motion? All in favor? All right, so it's approved. Next.
Great, moving on to the next item, that's going to be our report on privacy as the staff comes down. So I want to be open, honest, and direct and frame the discussion that to date in the privacy area, we have definitely been going slow to go fast. This was done partially intentionally. Lessons learned from other cities like Seattle and our Harvard Law engagement with our city informed our thinking about the process and led us to the approach of developing the principles in collaboration with the community to provide a North Star before writing policy. We also went slow because, frankly, we put in place a process and a team structure that worked for principles but is not going to work for writing policy. At the end of this presentation, I'll outline our path forward to achieve greater speed and better utilization of existing resources to develop that privacy policy. And now I'll turn the presentation over to our broadband analyst, Liam Cunningham, and the city's chief information officer, Rob Lloyd, and our broadband manager, Jay Guevara, who, sorry, is missing from the slide.
Someday we'll get it done. Liam Crawford. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the committee, and members of the public and city staff. My name is Liam Crawford, Senior Executive Analyst at the Office of Civic Innovation. Today we're going to provide an update and an overview on the city's privacy policy development. As Dolan mentioned, we last provided an update in November of 2018, as many of you may recall. So today we'll review the progress that we've made thus far since that last presentation. Before I jump into the meat of the presentation, I think it's important to review sort of our three goals behind the development of privacy principles and the subsequent policy. First off, we want to ensure that we safeguard the public's trust, and that is certainly top of mind. And at a high level, we do this by engaging the community at each stage of privacy policy development and by establishing a governance model that is sustainable for improving city services commensurate with the pace of technology that we are seeing. So Today, we are going to review the city's digital privacy framework and overall governance model, provide an update on the community engagement process thus far, recommend the committee's acceptance of the final draft privacy principles, which have now gone through several iterations with input from the community engagement and subject matter experts. We're also going to, Rob Lloyd is going to review our privacy policy development thus far, and we'll conclude by Dolan providing some lessons learned and our next steps moving forward. So our overall framework and development of our privacy strategy began back in May of last year, following a pro bono benchmarking study provided by the Harvard Cyber Law Clinic, led by the work of Susan Crawford and her team. This work helped tremendously to set us up and identify the need to leverage existing city staff and resources to achieve the goals of safeguarding the public trust and engaging the community, and also establishing the governance model that I referenced in the last slide. So to strike this balance, we came at it in a three-pronged approach, with the end goal in mind of vetting values-driven privacy principles to ensure the development of ethical privacy policy and privacy consideration. So we first established the Privacy Working Group, which is comprised of senior cross-departmental city staff who produced the initial iteration of the city's privacy principles. We then established the Privacy Advisory Task Force, which is comprised of external subject matter experts. And then we also engaged residents through a series of public forums to receive community input on our privacy principles. The Privacy Working Group received the input from these public forums and the task force, and subsequently amended, improved, and ultimately produced the final privacy principles that we will present today. So the overall process is moving towards finalizing and subsequently implementing our privacy principles and leading to our policy development. So we've since begun the next step in our approach, which is to develop policy that can be applied to specific real-world technology applications, which Rob will touch on shortly. It's important to note, as Dolan indicated at the top of the presentation, that this framework has worked very well in developing our principles, albeit admittedly, and as Dolan mentioned, we need to have a more flexible and adaptive framework moving forward as we look at the scale of developing our policy moving forward. So Rob will get into the development of that process moving forward. But before we do that, I want to just run you through the community engagements that we've done thus far. We have held 3 public engagement forums. The first was held at the library on December 4th of last year, and it was facilitated in English. We had about 20 folks join us for that forum. The second was conducted at Somos Mayfair on April 24th, 2019, and that was facilitated in Spanish. The third was held on April 24th as well at the Vietnamese American Community Center, and that was facilitated in Vietnamese. As I mentioned, the forums were all attended roughly by 15 to 20 folks, and ultimately, all 3 of the public forums helped us continue to refine our principles, as you will see, and we learned at a very high level that folks agree with the overall intent of the privacy principles and confirm that the city's on the right track with clear values-driven privacy principles in order to safeguard the public's trust. And they certainly were seeking more tangible examples of privacy principle implementation and how that final policy is going to look. And they would like to see a strong method to ensure city and vendor compliance with the principles. So those are some high-level takeaways from those first 3 initial forums. Depending on funding, we anticipate continuing to hold similar forums and public engagements moving through the rest of the year. So just to get into and run through the Privacy Advisory Task Force, it is comprised of nonprofits, tech industry, academia, law enforcement, also former law enforcement, and our fellow colleagues from Santa Clara County. And the task force has been a huge resource, and we certainly appreciate some of whom are here today, their time that they've lent thus far. As you can see, we have gathered a rather exceptional group of thought leaders, which include ACLU, NAACP, Intel Labs, Cisco, SJSU, the Mark Kula Center for Applied Ethics, and as I mentioned, former San Jose Police Department leadership and the Santa Clara County's Chief Privacy Officer, which has been extremely valuable in vetting our principles thus far. So what we've learned from the first 3 meetings, which are held quarterly from the task force, and the first began in November of 2018, so towards the end of last year. And so we learned that the task force wanted us to acknowledge that privacy is a human right, which we incorporated right at the top of our principles, as you'll see in just a couple slides. They also encouraged us to use plain language as we were drafting them and to clarify and be clear on how we inform residents on data collection, distribution, and retention. Ensure that we evaluate privacy and security risk in both current, new, and existing projects, provide timely notification of data breaches, and overall, they were supportive of the general approach and that this builds a foundation for a solid foundation for writing our policy. So with that, as I mentioned earlier, we first presented the city's privacy principles last November to the committee. We received and incorporated much of your feedback that we received, and then also feedback from public forums, from the task force, and we've come to this final version of our privacy principles. I'll spare you reading through them all comprehensively, but I will read the top line of our 6 principles, which are: we value privacy, we collect only what we need, we are open and transparent, we give you control over your data, we share only what we need, and we design for privacy and security. And so at the end of this presentation, we're going to ask that committee accept this report, approve the principles, and subsequently refer them to full council for consideration on August 13th. But before we go ahead and do that, I want to turn it over to Rob to provide an overview of our privacy policy development thus far.
Thank you, Liam. Good afternoon, Chair, Mayor, committee members, and members of the public. Rob Lloyd, Chief Information Officer for the City of San Jose. The item before you on the screen is actually taking a step back and looking at the overall framework of how we're approaching this, with the recognition that with privacy, we are entering new territory. The technologies we're seeing, the uses, the level of data, the detail of data, and what we have access to is of a different generation than we've ever seen before. So the realization is we're going to use the principles we've developed with the advisory and with the public's input, inform it by the practices that we've had up to this point. So kind of we have a compass and a couple triangulation points, but also realize that ongoing this is going to continue to adapt. And one of the key findings from the Harvard work was this is a different space and a different liability question that's been asked than has been asked in the past. And it will continue to change in the future. So another way to say that is we'll continue to talk with the community, with the organization, and with council about how we evolve this as we evolve and our uses evolve. Starting at the top, we now have the privacy principles that have been formed by the process that Liam described. A couple of the applied uses that we've had to date include Wi-Fi and how we've rolled that out to the community and to the organization and to partners. We also have drones, which is the UAV UAS item. Sorry about the acronyms. And what that also informed us is some of the space that we have to create for public safety and their different uses. We've talked about in our contract terms how we extend work with us to our vendors and partners and nonprofits in protecting the privacy and security of data. And then autonomous vehicles has introduced yet another reach and an expansive view of how much data there is and what's possible and how we limit what we do. So this is the overall framework, but we also know that we have additional work coming at us that's going to continue to challenge this privacy policy that we're about to develop. And how the advisory group and council and the community voice are going to have to continue to weigh in on these things. For example, footfall analytics is how might we use cellular and Wi-Fi pings just to say where are people and what's the activity level in our organization, or in our community rather. Illegal dumping and monitoring, how do we watch and what do we watch for, and how do we protect against monitoring and recording things that we shouldn't, that goes a bit too far. And then sensing technologies, the use of it in surveillance for crime and public safety, and then the personalization of services that residents are demanding. And when you do those services and you make them very specific to the individual or the business, how do you still protect them in that process? And then on the far end, you actually have data monetization. The city and governments in general have a lot of valuable information. But before we sell access to that information or collect things for potential partnership and monetization, what are the controls that we would do, and where would we say we're not going to go down that route? It's important to note that the city has had some opportunities that we have said no to because when we've asked the privacy and security questions, that vendor or proposed partner didn't have the right answers. And so the city does take this stewardship role very important. But the intention is to make sure we don't inhibit innovation and progress, that we apply the privacy principles and the coming privacy policy in a way that's very constructive, but also informed by the changing voice of the community and council, and that we test these things out before we roll them out at scale. Just going back briefly, if you take a look at the privacy policy, what it's going to build around is the intent of the policy in terms of protecting the community and what Liam outlined as kind of our guiding stars. It's going to say what are the authorities under that policy for our organization, who's responsible for what, and what that ongoing outreach component must be for the city of San Jose. It is a lesson that we learned from the Harvard Cyber Law Clinic work, that different communities have different tolerances and expectations. So from New York to Seattle, you see a very different comfort level with how we treat privacy and treatment of data and use of data in services. And one example then to use is the Wi-Fi privacy that we've had some traction and journey with. So when wickedly fast Wi-Fi was originally created, it was for economic engagement of downtown to activate the space. And privacy was a very small consideration. The realization fairly soon into that was we need to make sure we don't collect information that we wouldn't otherwise have a need to use. And so that's the structure we put in there. When we had the partnership with Terragraph, which was an innovation demonstration type of agreement to say how might technology expand and accelerate the reach of Wi-Fi to include more people, we included some more of those types of controls and concerns in the design of that. Then came Access East Side, and we had very specific controls since it was student-based on how we would and would not collect information and how we would protect those students specifically from any kind of activity, but also from any data collection that would even violate FERPA and other controls. And then as we go into future Wi-Fi deployments for economic development, for organizational use, and for inclusion purposes, they're going to be informed by all of these iterative steps we've taken so that we can make sure that the Wi-Fi build and the services that we have for wireless in the community address those concerns for all those different audiences. And with that, we'll turn it over to Dolan to close us out.
Great, thanks, Rob. So kind of cutting to the chase, we feel we're at a juncture here from developing principles to now taking those principles and applying them to actually writing policy. So the team took a step back and looked at what we did and basically took a fairly moderate pivot here moving forward. And the first is we need to much better leverage existing expertise and capacity. We now have a Office of Administration Policy and Intergovernmental Affairs that is fairly experienced with developing policy, recently finishing some of our medical marijuana. So civic innovation and API are basically, Lee and Dolan are going to co-lead this policy development moving forward. The second is we're going to have clearly defined expectations. We really, due to the fact we were taking time slices of existing resources and we didn't have a full-time commitment from any resource to do this work. Liam was about 20% of his time, except when the mayor of a city called about broadband permitting, and then we had to scramble and get back to broadband permitting. So we're going to have clearly defined expectations and a work plan with resourcing across city staff, the working group, the task force, and the community, and we're going to develop and maintain that. We're increasing the resourcing, so in the proposed FY 18-19 budget, there's additional funding for potentially a full-time FTE and consulting services, or potentially to augment the team. So we'll be leveraging the larger API team as well as augmenting it. And Lee and I are going to be spending the next couple weeks figuring out that plan. And then lastly, we're going to reinforce the task force, but repurpose the working group. The task force will continue to be a valuable external advisory board, but the working group was really never a working group. It was an internal advisory team, and so we're going to treat it as such. And then Lee's API team and Civic will help lead both of these teams. So moving forward, some immediate next steps. Again, we asked that as part of this acceptance of this report, we also approve these privacy principles and refer them to full council for August 13th. Lee and I will be co-creating an approach and work plan. We're going to be resourcing that work plan and begin privacy development. And to hold ourselves accountable, Lee and I have agreed that we're going to report back to committee with the detailed work plan and detailed sourcing at the September 5th committee, so we can provide a clear path forward on expectations that we can meet or exceed. And that ends our presentation. Turn it back to the chair for any questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Jimenez. Go ahead.
Thank you for the information. I appreciate this is the first time I've seen this. I think the last presentation was before I was on the committee, so I very much appreciate it. I just want to point out something I thought was fascinating, that we value privacy, that the affirmation that privacy is an inherent human right. I hadn't really thought about that, but I think it makes sense. And so the question I have is, with regard to the Privacy Advisory Task Force, certainly you should, I imagine there was some sort of process to get down to the principles that you're now putting forward. Was there anything that was hotly debated, where there was maybe some differing of opinions that maybe didn't make it on here that you think is important to know? I mean, or was there a general consensus as to these are the things?
I think where we are now is this was the go slow to go fast, so we took the time to work with the task force and receive their input. I think there was more discussion about what is a principle and how specific or general are you, and what level of granularity is not getting too specific that you're actually starting to write policy. And so I think a lot of the discussion was on granularity. I generally feel that we were able to work through and get to this group of principles that was largely contributed and advised, and generally heading in the right direction by the task force.
Okay. I don't know if Rob has wants to make
Yeah, and I think Liam and I can inform some of the discussion about items like, can you do informed consent? Is that truly possible? Will people understand what they're agreeing to in the level of detail like you have with a Google or an app or an iPhone? Another one was they were very supportive and surprised by the fact that we've turned down engagements with companies because they couldn't answer the privacy questions well, and they challenged us to actually tell that story and make sure we said that here today, because the public needs to hear that we have been serious about it. It's not just a new thing. Another thing was to make sure that we're serious about not collecting information if we truly don't need it, so that not everything turns into a surveillance technology. And there was more, and I think Victor's probably going to ask to speak and submit a yellow card, but there were some really good debates. I think the clear line is the fact that we have the agreed principles that a large group of diverse people from industry plus nonprofits, ACLU, really came together, and there actually wasn't much disagreement about those fundamental items. It was just the practice and the specifics.
All right, thank you. One of the, just being new to this committee, one of the things I appreciated about the task force feedback is the use of plain language. I think that's often missing in conversations around technology and especially privacy and law and such. And so I think that's very an important component of it. The other thing I was going to, and it's probably a silly question, and I think I know the answer, but this is a policy that's going to move forward to full city council. I'm sure that's going to happen here today, right? We're going to adopt it. It's just like any other policy that can be modified, amended, changed. Certainly, I'm sure you don't recommend doing that every other Tuesday, which I'm sure wouldn't happen. But I mean, that's the potential, right?
Yeah. So to differentiate the principles from the policy, we are, as we said here, asking the committee to approve the principles and then take it to full council. As it relates to the policy, our approach is generally aligned with standard policy, which is bringing the policy to council for approval.
But the principles are part and parcel of the policy.
Yeah, so we would bring the principles, so the principles we will bring to the full council for approval. And as we learn about potential changes or elaborations to the principles, we will also we will also certainly bring those back for any proposed changes.
Right. And the reason I ask is I think Rob might have mentioned just the comfort level with privacy and how New York is maybe a little different than Seattle. And I was just thinking about the evolution of that, right, as it relates to our city and how we incorporate that as we move forward with this policy, and what are going to be those openings in which we realize, oh, you know what, our constituents aren't very happy about this. I mean, we then go in, and I'm sure the idea wouldn't be to change one of the fundamental principles, which I think those are sort of, should be, in my mind, long-standing sort of principles that guide things. But I'm just curious as to how that has the potential to play out.
Well, we expect the Privacy Task Force to be continuing and continue to work with us on the policy development. So we will continue the engagement with the task force. We're going to continue the engagement with the community, and we will then learn as we go through the privacy policy development. We'll learn and iterate to improve as we see things that need to evolve or change, and we get the community feedback that needs to happen, and we have a task force that supports that. Then we'll be coming to council with those changes, and much the same way with the policy. One thing I do want to make clear, because it's a slight potential misunderstanding, is that most privacy policy we will be bringing back to the council for review, feedback, and approval. There may be some administrative things like we do today with administrative policy that the CMO or the departments have some flexibility to work, and that's our recommendation of how we're going to move forward. But most of the policy would come back for council review and approval.
If I can also clarify, the city has two different types of policy manuals. There's administrative policy that the city manager adopts for its employees and how they work within the city. There's another city policy manual, which is a policy that this council adopts that applies across the board whenever there are any projects that impact the public and impact the city as a whole. So what Dolan is saying, it wouldn't be a city manager policy where it just impacts the employees. It would be a city policy that would impact the public and all projects that deal with that particular policy.
Okay.
And then also in the discussion, the principles are basically going to be the guiding provisions for the policy. We anticipate, I haven't seen the policy or what it's going to look like, but I'm assuming it will reiterate the principles in the policy and then set out how those principles are going to be implemented within the provisions of the policy.
Okay, all right, it makes sense. So thank you for the information. Appreciate it.
So before we go on, I have a public speaker, Vincent Sin.
Good afternoon, Chair, Mayor, Council members. My name is Victor Sin. I'm a member of the Privacy Advisory Task Force representing the ACLU of Northern California. Just now, Councilmember Jimenez mentioned the word consensus, so I would just like to provide a clarification. So first of all, okay, I'm not commenting on whether there is or is not consensus, okay? I just want to clarify that, okay, the task force members have not been asked today, okay, to vote on the privacy principles. As such, okay, the ACLU of California has not stated, okay, whether it will endorse or not endorse the privacy principles, okay? My comments here, okay, are not an indication of how ACLU of Northern California might vote, okay, if there is such a voting process. I just want to clarify that, okay, the presentation and the information should not be interpreted as an endorsement, okay, of the privacy principles by the ACLU of Northern California. Please don't read me wrong, okay? I enjoy, okay, I have great working relationship, okay, with all the task force members, okay, and also with every city staff member. I just want to make it clear, okay, as to ACLU of Northern California's position. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Jones.
Thank you for that presentation as well. I had a comment on two of the principles. One is we collect only what we need. Was there a discussion in terms of collect and retain or store only what we need? Because I think that would be an important component of
Yeah, I'm going to let
our
Rob
privacy policy.
Rob field that question, Vice Mayor.
Collect. So collect for us is if we actually save it, there is a retention policy that we have to keep it for a certain amount of time. And so one of the controls that we have is to not collect it unless we absolutely have a use for it. But yes, once we collect it, it is saving it for a certain amount of time, depending on which part of the retention policy it activates. And that could be very different. General rule is 2 years. You can have less in some areas, more in others. But when we say collect, it should be synonymous with us actually saving it and then retaining it for a period of time, if that answers the question.
Yeah, it answers the question. I'm just trying to figure out, I don't want to get into wordsmithing this because you put a lot of work into it, but when I read that, I don't necessarily assume that we're also talking about retention. So I was just wondering if there's any way we could be clearer on the fact that collecting means also retaining for a certain period of time, because I think for a lot of our residents, that retention of data, of their data is an important component. And then the other thing was we share only what we need. That's still very kind of vague to me, just in terms of how that's phrased. And then the other aspect of that too is that we know that there's going to be there's potential for us to be required to share that information if it's some type of legal action or law enforcement action. So how do we create clarity in terms of we share only what we need? It's just a little vague to me, that one particular one.
Yeah, and the first draft of this one was quite a bit longer, so it was kind of a blend here of getting to plain language and keeping it simple, yet also practical. I think the key thing is what you'll see in the policy that comes from this. We'll have more responsibilities and authorities, and we'll make a special note to be clearer on the retention piece and the sharing piece. What we tried to actually step back for on the sharing was because of potential law enforcement uses and requirements where we might not have a choice sometimes, and that would be a need. And it is something that the advisory group did debate, and we talked about, I can't say ad nauseum, we talked about it at length. I don't think we came to a resolution where we all agreed, but this language seemed to capture it at the base level where we could practically apply something. But in terms of the sharing, the core principles here are that we will only share it if we have to, if we have a need to, and when we do, it will be very thin, so it's not more information than is appropriate.
So would a better way to phrase that then would be we share only what is required?
That was one of the original words, and we said required isn't necessarily, didn't necessarily capture it either. I hate to redebate it for you, but
Hey, well, I don't want to go down that road. I'm just sharing my thoughts.
yeah. And I think we
Seeing
can
this.
treat some of this in the policy that then you'll see, because that is something council has direct impact on.
Great, thank you.
And just to follow up, I think to that point, some of the discussion within the task force and the working group, we had both of these discussions at length, and I think the idea is that when we move to having tangible policy, we have to be able to sort of back up and explain how our policy maps to that principle, and I think that's when we'll really start to see the teeth of the principles once policy comes to fruition. And then on retention, we also discussed it at length within the working group and the task force, and there's varying policy requirements at the federal, state, and then for different types of data, such as HIPAA, FERPA, whatever. So it gets rather convoluted. So we started to get into the policy making aspect when we were getting into discussion of retention. So again, I think that's something that we'll see more tangibly laid out within the policy as opposed to the principles.
Thank you.
Mayor Liccardo?
How about we share but we care? That's all right.
We will invite you to the next working
Yeah, I
group,
look forward to
Mayor,
that.
and we'll
Thanks.
see how that, we'll see
Yeah,
how
I'll
that-
bring my thesaurus. So anyway, thank you, Liam and Jay and Rob and Dolan, everyone on the working group who's been working hard on this. I also just want to thank, excuse me, the folks at Civic Makers, and certainly the nonprofits that are partnering with us, Somos Mayfair, Meta, Vietnamese American Cultural Center, and all the folks who've been helping with outreach. Just a quick question about outreach. I can certainly understand the intentional nature in which we want to go out in the community and get feedback, particularly from folks who may not be as digitally inclined. Are we getting feedback online as well from really sophisticated users of digital services?
I think it's a good question. I'm not sure we have a specific channel that asks those questions, and that's probably something we should be looking at as we move forward with the policy work.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I could just throw it out there, I mean, nothing else, just putting it up on social media and asking for feedback wouldn't be a bad thing. 'Cause I'm sure
Well, you're pretty good at tweeting, Mayor, so
Yeah.
that's obviously one channel, and we'll look at other avenues to both communicate as we receive feedback on our privacy policy development.
Yeah, we're happy
begins.
to tweet, as long as I don't necessarily, well, you don't want me reading and responding to all the comments, but okay. So yeah, happy to do that. In terms of how we go forward here, I know that we're just putting the work plan together now. My one fear I have is that because these conversations involve often very abstract principles and values, and their intersection with very concrete specific use cases, that it often can become very difficult to get to a finish line. There's certainly a wide variety of views out there and so forth, and I guess, are we going to proceed with a sense that, we should get something done and then iterate? Or is this, I'd hate to think we have to get it all perfect and wrapped in a bow before we're finally moving forward with the policy, because I know a lot of other work gets held up if that's the case. And I want to just get a sense of how you guys view this.
Yeah. So we're on the same page. I mean, this is a case where perfect is the enemy of good.
Agreed.
We've seen other cities who've had to iterate through this, and albeit painful. I think Seattle's on their 4th iteration, and so iterate to improve is what we will be doing here. And the idea would be that we see diminishing marginal returns as we go through each use case.
Right.
So we may take we may get so far with the use cases and say this policy is 80% baked.
Yeah.
So let's get that approved, and then let's continue to iterate through that, which we will continue to do as technology changes. At the pace it is, this is going to be an evergreen policy.
Yeah.
But we're completely agree, and that was the go slow to go fast.
Yeah.
And Lee and I have talked about this, and we're in agreement that that's the right way to handle it.
I appreciate it, because I know privacy is very important, but it's also a critical path for a lot of stuff, and I hate to think, because we know we're not going to get it perfectly right the first time, and we're just going to have to keep learning. So thank you. I appreciate that very much. In terms of how we lead this work, do you anticipate that we're going to have the same centralized team working across all use cases, or are we going to have specialized folks with that particular use case?
It's going to be a hybrid. I mean, I think the first thing is have a work plan with people assigned to it and drive that work. So be execution focused. There will be a centralized team, and then there will be subject matter experts brought in, from the departments, potentially from our task force, if appropriate, from the private sector, to contribute some of that subject matter expertise. So it's going to be a centralized team, because this is a citywide policy, and then we'll bring in departments and other subject matter experts kind of on that use case basis, as we need to actually understand some of the details of the technology nature of the privacy that we're applying it to.
Okay, great. And on the Wi-Fi, do we know when the splash page is going to be up?
Rob has a really good answer to that.
Oh, good.
We actually are prepared, and we have the language. We just need a final review, and we can put it up as early as next week.
Fabulous. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate all the work. When you guys were showing the use cases, I know there was one on surveillance or something having to do with crime. It might have been surveillance. And I'm hoping that we include in that not just sort of the standard what we think of as video cameras, but also license plate readers, which are becoming increasingly of utility. And I know something we're looking at more and more as we think about carjackings and car thefts that had been increasing for several years. Could be a very important tool, and it would just be helpful to incorporate that in whatever you guys are doing in the surveillance use case.
Yeah, we plan on doing that. Obviously, certain areas of the city are using that now, and part of this is taking that and making it a citywide policy. So illegal dumping in parks or whatever else, the copper theft on the poles. We will make sure that we learn and lift that policy and not reinvent the wheel, but make it a citywide policy that all departments can use.
Cool, perfect, thanks. And by the way, I really like the principles. It's great.
So on the principles, or the distinction between the principles and the policy, I just want to add to distinguish, because it sounds similar, and I think in my mind, to help simplify it, I think it's more like the principles or the morality of it, right? So you shall not speed, but endanger people by speeding. But then the policy itself is actually determining, is it wrong to drive over 35, or is it 25 or 40, depending on what it is. So it really kind of hones and focuses the principle into an application. So that's how I see it. And I don't know if it helps Councilmember Jimenez or anybody else, but that's kind of the relationship that I see with that. I wanted to ask about the principles that we outlined. Everywhere that I go and I try to talk to residents about, how would you feel if we had cameras up on every street corner? If we became like London with closed circuit TV everywhere, would you feel that was, an overreach of the state? And I'm constantly surprised that at least my residents tell me they wouldn't care. They would prefer it. They think that it would help decrease crime and fight theft and burglary and all that. And so that, to me personally, is a bit alarming, because I kind of pose that question rhetorically to kind of say this is why we don't do it. We don't want to become Big Brother, and yet, in my experience, I find residents don't mind Big Brother, and it leads me to my observation that when we download iTunes or agree to do Facebook or whatever, there's this huge agreement, and most of us don't read. We just kind of scroll to the bottom and then say yes, whatever. So the expectation of privacy among normal folks, just living their lives, trying to do right by their families and whatever, I don't think is really there. So what are we as a city kind of doing to help them understand what's at stake, or understand to help boost their expectation of privacy? Because I feel like we can come up with the ideal principles, but among the people who think about this, and privacy experts and whoever else, but even if it's a bad policy or a really good policy, and most residents don't really care and they're just willing to go with it anyway, it doesn't help us. I want to do something where the residents are kind of thinking about this, chewing on it, and understanding that if I sign up for Facebook or whatever, I'm basically giving up, my data or A, B, and C. When I download it onto my phone, I'm giving them access to my full contacts, and there are implications to every action. Are we helping them at all with that?
Well, I think one way I would answer that is the concept of the use case, the original intent, which is still there but didn't come through, is these are purpose-driven use cases that actually make it concrete and real to the community and the people who are writing the policy. So if we start off with, we're going to monetize data, heads will explode. If we specifically say, in order to find the most efficient use of curb space, so you're not circling the city for 10, then people tend to understand it better, and they tend to have clearer thoughts on whether they support it or not. So when we talk about use cases, we're going to get very specific about using cameras to specifically react to a crime and identify if there was anything recorded, right? So I think as we talk about use cases, it can be very abstract, and the purpose was to have purpose-driven use cases so they understand the intent of the policy. I think on the other things we can think about that is how do we make this real, and what type of community outreach might we do and to make this real. I think we should actually get some experience in going through a few use cases, seeing what the policy looks like, and then work with our task force and work with the council to figure out how do we actually make some of this more tangible, you said, so that people care. Why do I care about privacy? This is why you care. And I think that's a valid point that we'll take under consideration.
Sure. I mean, I think under the law, it all comes down to what is the reasonable expectation of privacy. And if normal people don't reasonably expect something, that shifts the line in the sand very far in one direction. So my hope is to do what we can to kind of boost that reasonable expectation of privacy. And because, the internet is still relatively new, we're still in this era, there are people who remember life before the internet. And so we're not accustomed to thinking along this way. Whatever we can do as a city to help people grapple with this and kind of rethink, what are rights, as we say, I would be in favor of that. So with that, can I get a motion? All right. Any
Cross-reference.
That's included. Cross-reference to the full council. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. All right. Go on.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Moving on to the My San Jose update as the staff comes down. Becoming a more user-friendly city is one of the 5 pillars of our Smart City Vision. Today, we have 3 strategic initiatives in that area: the integrated permitting system, which we're going to talk about later, the city website, which is our digital front door, and the My San Jose application, the subject of this report. It's important to remember that a delightful user experience and infotaining experience is really requires the careful orchestration across organizations and automated and manual processes and the supporting technologies. So in the case of My San Jose, it's not just the iPhone app. That's the sexy part of My San Jose, but it's not just the iPhone app. It's about end-to-end service delivery, about the process and the organizations and the technology to support that. So since our last report to the committee, we've established a new governance model so we can more efficiently implement and upgrade our processes. We've released some new functionality on My San Jose, and we've encountered a few obstacles, which we're going to detail in the next presentation, which I'll now turn over to our digital services lead, Michelle Tong.
Thank you, Dylan. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, committee members, fellow staff, and members of the public. I'm Michelle Tong, Digital Services Lead in the City Manager's Office of Civic Innovation, and I'll be co-presenting today with Heather Hoshi, Division Manager for Transportation, and Yura Data, Content Designer on the Innovation team. In today's update, we're going to cover 3 main topics. First, we're going to show a video that affirms why My San Jose matters to our residents. Second, we'll share highlights on what we've done over the past 6 months. And third, we'll review what we're doing next, including our approach to language translation and more broadly making My San Jose inclusive of our diverse population. So always start with the why. Why does My San Jose matter to our residents? Over the past 2 years since My San Jose launched, we've heard from many residents, business owners, and council members about why San Jose matters to them. And what we hear is that at its best, My San Jose shows our residents that we care about their neighborhood. And I'm going to share a video of District 2 resident Deb Torrens, who captures the sentiment better than I ever could.
The My San Jose app is this really handy tool to report stuff. I can make a difference just by having this app on my phone and finding things that are not looking good in the neighborhood, taking a picture, and then what happens is this magical thing where I get an email back that says, this problem has now been taken care of. Before I was focused on just this one little landscaping area, now I can report things all over.
With the assistance of Oracle Cloud, we're able to seamlessly integrate the back-end function to ensure that every request that was made through the My San Jose app was routed directly to the department responsible so they could be responding as quickly as possible.
It's very empowering to know that you're going to report something and the city is going to respond. So then as a citizen, I feel this burden lifted because I've done something. I have made my city better. It's people working for a common cause, using this common little tool that technology made possible.
We know we'd love to have more money and more employees. We simply don't. And so we need to be able to leverage great technology to make our employees more effective. And that's the Smart City vision. You're really scraping the bottom of the barrel for actors, aren't you?
Steve Carell wasn't available.
Oh, that hurts. Oh, they'll be hell to pay.
So in Deb's own words, when My San Jose works for our residents, it's an empowering, almost magical tool that helps them feel connected to our government and feel that we care about their neighborhoods. And that's what we really want to focus on and keep at the center when we think about My San Jose's future. And in fact, as we've learned over the past 2 years since My San Jose launched, it is very popular with many of our residents. We average 165,000 total service requests in 1 year across all categories, which is an average of 460 average service requests per day. And these requests come from over 48,000 registered users, which means that about 1 out of every 20 San Joseans has an account with My San Jose. And that's a figure that doesn't include reporters who choose to remain anonymous, and there are many who do choose to remain anonymous. Finally, on the bottom of this screen, something that's important to highlight is that these requests are coming in through multiple different channels. When I say My San Jose, many of us think immediately of the mobile app, which accounts for about 1/3 of all service requests. But it's important to remember that a significant portion of those requests also come through the My San Jose website, as well as the customer contact center, which is both phone as well as live chat. And then there's a significant portion that come directly through the service teams, through emails or calls to the service teams in the departments, or that are self-reported by service teams as they're going about their work. And giving our residents multiple options to report is part of our strategy and our commitment to serving our diverse population. We don't expect everyone to download the app on their phone, so we maintain multiple ways for them to report. And then, of course, once they have reported, to make it really work for our residents, we know that we need to be thinking about My San Jose as more than an app. As Dolan said, it's really about the end-to-end service delivery, from reporting through to triaging and then responding in the field. And that's why a big part of our job for making My San Jose work well is not just about the technology, but about figuring out how we work across our organization to improve our process so that more residents can feel the way that Deb feels about My San Jose. Next, I'd like to share a few highlights of some key accomplishments we've prioritized and executed on over the past year. So the first thing we did was literally to get all of the stakeholders in the same room. As I mentioned, Making My San Jose better involves a lot of people, over 50 staff from 6 different service teams from 5 different departments, from directors to frontline crews. And several of those staff are here in the chamber with us today, and I'm grateful for their presence, in addition to Heather and Mira. We also have 3 folks from our potholes team in DOT, Mike Garcia, Jeff Stitt, and David Salazar, as well as Shika Gupta, the service owner for illegal dumping, and Liz Jang from the abandoned vehicles team. So what you're seeing in this picture is a portion of the folks who were involved in a discovery sprint that we conducted last September to ground our work in our users' needs and our staff process. And we spent an intense 4 days interviewing over 20 residents about their experience with My San Jose, mapping out our process, prototyping improvements, and then testing those improvements to see which ideas were the best. And by the end of the discovery sprint, we'd established a vision for My San Jose. My San Jose makes it easier for community and government to work together, keeping San Jose safe, clean, and engaged. And this vision statement is a North Star that we use to align our work across departments and to keep us focused on the investments that will move us towards this vision. We execute on this vision statement by identifying specific objectives, the first of which is to build trust with reporters, with our residents and businesses who are reporting issues to the app, by setting expectations and demonstrating responsiveness. Our second objective is to improve service delivery to make the greatest impact on citywide cleanliness and safety. Thirdly, to build a team that works across departments to advance our shared vision, and to upgrade our technology platform to improve reliability, sustainability, and minimize new service introduction time. Once we'd agreed on these 4 objectives, we then agreed on a finite set of key results to make progress on each objective in a 3-month period. What you're looking at here are our key results for last quarter, January through March of this year. So this single slide captures all 15 prioritized action items, plus 1 stretch goal, that we set out to coordinate across departments spanning IT, transportation, parks, and environmental services, as well as the city manager's office. And today I'm going to highlight 2 of the key results as part of our work. So the first one falls under the objective of building trust with reporters. And that key result is telling reporters the target resolution time for each service category. So 6 months ago, when we evaluated what was working and what wasn't working in My San Jose, one of the most obvious needs we all agreed on was applying some customer service standards to the way we were delivering through My San Jose. Essentially setting expectations with our customers and then meeting those expectations. At the time, people who were submitting requests weren't being told when to expect a response from the city. Even if we had published those times elsewhere, that information wasn't being provided to the users of the app at the time that they submitted a request. So to change that, every service team identified a typical resolution time. In some cases, it was an existing performance target. In other cases, they reviewed past data to come up with a typical resolution time that made sense. And then we worked with our internal design team, our product manager, and our contractor, AST, to implement a new feature in version 1.7 of the app, which was released in April. So now, after you submit a request, you'll see a confirmation message that tells you how long it usually takes to resolve that type of request. In this example, you're seeing the message that comes up after you report an illegal dumping request. So it may seem simple and obvious, and in some ways it is, but executing it really required getting alignment across all of our teams and then driving execution from the program level to the technical implementation, all of which was enabled by having objectives and key results that kept us focused on that goal. The second key result I want to highlight is related to improving service delivery. And in this column, each of the key results was really focused on each of the service teams piloting and measuring a process improvement that was relevant to that service team. So I'm going to hand it over to Heather Hoshi, Division Manager in Transportation, to talk about how they're using data to improve response times for abandoned vehicle requests.
Thank you, Michelle. Good. Thanks. So prior to 2017, the abandoned vehicle abatement work management system we were using didn't give us a great view of our service delivery. Our opportunities to access information from the system were limited, and any data analysis performed had to be done manually. This cumbersome process hindered our ability to truly identify and understand the more complex pain points the program was experiencing. After making investments in our people, process, and technology, we are now able to use data on a daily basis to drive decision-making. What you're seeing on the screen are a few of the dashboards that our team uses to monitor the status of the abandoned vehicle program in real time. It's important to point out that these dashboards are not standard reports available through the work management system we're using. Many of these dashboards were designed and created in-house by our data analyst, Liz Zhang, in order to help us examine and monitor the specific service delivery. Without this in-house talent, the current depth of our data analytic capabilities would not be possible. Having this level of visibility into our numbers enables us to spot areas for improvement and develop impactful solutions. So now I'd like to walk you through a quick live demo of two of our main dashboards. What you're seeing here is our daily overview dashboard. The data displayed updates in real time and provides a look at the status of our current service requests. You can see we have approximately 15 open and pending VA service requests, and the color-coded gauges provide a visual cue, quickly alerting us to any potential issues that may be developing related to a possible backlog situation. Moving on to our daily activity dashboard, here you can see many service requests that have been worked during the day, that 319 number. And then if you move over to the donut chart there, you can see it breaks down the actions taken on service requests during the current month. For example, staff left warning notices on approximately 2,400 vehicles, closed out over 3,000 service requests as gone or moved, and towed 286 vehicles for being in violation. So this year we piloted the expanded use of contract staff with the goal to further improving timeliness of our response and reducing the overall resolution time of VA service requests. Initially, contract staff was brought on board in 2017 to conduct the 55,000 plus initial field visits the VA program requires annually. Building on this concept, staff identified a process improvement opportunity that included increasing the contractor's scope of work to take on follow-up field visits. During these secondary visits, contractors confirm the violation status of a reported vehicle, closing out service requests for vehicles found in compliance, and referring those eligible for enforcement to a parking compliance officer. Within 3 short months of implementing the process improvement, staff was able to quickly measure the impacts of the program and demonstrate the significant multi-level improvement the team achieved. A significant amount of the VA backlog or workload of over 3,300 field visits was transferred from parking compliance officers to contract staff. This freed up parking compliance officers and allowed the PCU to focus on providing other parking-related service deliveries and facilitated an additional issuance of over 5,000 parking citations. Additionally, through the piloted process improvement, we were able to improve average follow-up timeliness for vehicle abatement service requests by 20%. We moved from 8.2 to 6.5 day response. The identification of this process improvement was made possible through data analysis and ongoing and regular program monitoring we do. However, just important to our success was our ability to make the deployment adjustment and then accurately and quickly identify that the change had resulted in positive outcomes. Our ability to measure the magnitude of our success was only doable because of the data analytic tools we have put into place and the fact that we invested in skilled staff able to use those tools. The service improvements we've been able to implement over the last year plus have clearly benefited the San Jose communities we serve. But I'd also like to share with you the impacts felt by the Parking Compliance Unit and the team responsible for delivering these services. Staff has become re-energized and re-engaged as a result of feeling supported and having a better understanding of how their daily work impacts the VA program, our success, and our communities. Our teams have taken back ownership of the VA program and its operational processes. Staff believes in and is committed to using data to facilitate continuous improvement and future program flexibility. Michelle?
Thank you, Heather. So I really applaud Heather's leadership and initiative in bringing a data-driven approach to the vehicle abatement program. And all of this work has really been driven by her team in DOT. The dashboards you're seeing were developed by DOT staff in their work order management system, and they're actually much more detailed than what we currently have centrally for My San Jose. So one of the things we want to work on next is how to seamlessly integrate different levels of data reporting from the operational to the strategic. And also, we want to draw on one of the benefits of collaborating across departments like this is that we can learn from different approaches that different service teams have taken and then apply the best practices to other teams. This is our final report card for last quarter's key results. Out of 15, we completed 3. Another 3 were partially completed, and 2 were not completed. Of the 2 that were not completed, 1 was related to mapping out the desired process for improving internal referrals between teams. This is still a priority. We simply ran out of time to get this done in the previous quarter. The second key result that we did not complete was publishing the RFP for a new technology platform, which is what we've been referring to as My San Jose 2.0. We have completed a draft request for proposals, and this draft is currently in the procurement backlog waiting to be worked on by finance staff. So we'll close by talking about what we're planning on doing next. This screen shows our objectives and key results for the current quarter. We have the same objectives as we did last quarter, but a new set of key results that build on our work from the previous quarter. So for example, under building trust with reporters, we have a key result related to taking a look at our customer satisfaction data and identifying a meaningful baseline to work on improving in the future. Another key result I would like to highlight, which is already accomplished, is that under building a team, one of our key results was to hire a new project manager for My San Jose in IT following the departure of Charles Amos in March of this year. And thanks to very speedy recruitment work by our assistant CIO, Jerry Dreesen in IT, we have already hired a new project manager, Herman Sedano, who has over 10 years of program management. And he's with us in the box today. He has over 10 years of program management for complex projects, including implementations of other customer relationship management systems. So we're very excited to welcome Herman to the team. So in addition to executing on our key results for this quarter, we've already begun planning for next quarter's work, particularly around expanding the inclusivity and the accessibility of My San Jose. And these items on this slide were also described in the city manager's budget addendum number 27, which was issued at the end of May. Given San Jose's diversity, with over 57% of our residents speaking a language other than English at home, it is a priority for us to make My San Jose accessible to all of our residents. And as the first item shows, we began this work a year ago when we engaged 2 Code for America fellows, Julie Kim and Yera Data, to conduct user research and test prototypes with Spanish and Vietnamese-speaking residents. And you'll get to hear directly from Yera shortly about those key findings. And we've kept both Julie and Yera on as designers on our team so that they can help us implement their recommendations into future versions of My San Jose. Moving down this list, other strategies we're pursuing include translating our existing outreach postcard into Spanish and Vietnamese, exploring interim solutions for the current My San Jose website and mobile app in the version 1.x platform to make them more inclusive and accessible. And the timeline for implementation will depend on feasibility, scope, and cost. We need to do the exploration first. And then finally, we will proceed with the My San Jose 2.0 procurement when the RFP moves out of the backlog. And the draft RFP already makes it clear that inclusivity and accessibility are priorities for the new platform redesign. With that, I will turn it over to Nira to close with sharing the findings from the user research that she and Julie conducted, which are informing many of our next steps.
Thanks, Michelle. With the help of Spanish and Vietnamese interpreters, my colleague Julie Kim and I conducted 19 in-person interviews with people who are either low income and/or spoke English as a second language to understand the barriers to accessing My San Jose. We also built prototypes, which are alternative versions of the app, with possible improvements for testing purposes. We then tested these versions out with Spanish and Vietnamese speakers living in San Jose. Based on this research, we found that improving the app by using simpler language, emphasizing visual icons, and creating a more intuitive user flow are important steps in making the translation efforts successful. Due to limitations in digital access and literacy, some residents will always prefer to phone in requests or submit requests via their desktops. So it's important to maintain offline and online touchpoints. None of the people we talked to in these communities had ever heard of the app and weren't currently using it. So it further validates that outreach is key to ensuring all people living in San Jose are aware of how they can access city services.
Thanks, Nira. So that concludes our report. We're proud of what we accomplished. We have a lot more to do, and we're excited to deliver these improvements to our residents. Thank you.
Mayor Liccardo.
Thanks. I really want to say thank you to everyone for your hard work in pushing forward, and thanks in particular, Michelle, Nira, and Heather certainly. But I really appreciate the outreach work that was done here by you and your partner on this, on trying to see how we can better penetrate monolingual communities. I know this is going to be a challenge for us, but obviously something I know we'll take on aggressively through 2.0 as well. Given that we know procurement continues to be a pain point, you have any sense of where we are on the list in terms of whether My San Jose is likely to be out the door sooner rather than later?
I'm seeing if our partners from finance are here. So I think the answer is we're needing to look at further modifications to My San Jose 1.x.
Yeah.
When you look at the volume and some of the relative priorities of mission critical things that are in the queue and the time, the 14 years we've gotten into this situation, we're not going to get out of this situation with some of the bandwidth and procurement for a while.
Okay.
So our RFP for looking at our processes and organization and making improvements is ready to go. Finance is hiring and retaining resources as best as possible, but with 1.x up and running, I'm afraid that what Rob and I have concluded is we're probably going to have to look at another tranche of upgrades to 1.x. And I don't want to speak for Julie Cooper's team on exactly that when and how 2.0 will get out of backlog and into being worked.
Okay. Appreciate that. Michelle, the 48,000 users you mentioned, is that solely for the smartphone app, or does that include folks who are entering through other portals, that is on desktops or phone?
It includes people who are using the website. You can create an account through the website as well.
So do we have a sense of how many folks are actually using the mobile app? 48,000?
I can dig more. We will dig more into the analytics. The data that we shared in the presentation showed that 32% of our requests are coming through the mobile app, which is roughly a third.
Right.
Exactly how many users that is, I would have to go back and check what that relates to, because some of those requests will be the same users.
Yeah. Okay. Just curious to see what extent we're really getting penetration out there. I know in some neighborhoods everybody knows about it, and others, obviously not as many. And it's good to know. And I'm just curious. I know you guys have probably explored every option here, but is there a backdoor to procurement at this point? I mean, is there? Are there other paths that can be legally created?
In theory,
you don't have to say anything that's going to make Ed arrest you or anything. But
So certainly as we bring in our consulting team to look at process improvements, leveraging purchasing pools and piggybacking other contracts done by other cities where we can, we'll certainly be looking at those. Again, unfortunately, just the sheer volume of what's in the backlog and what has to be worked just does not put my San Jose close to coming out. So I think where are we going to be with my San Jose versus what are things we're going to look at?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's general acceptance we've probably over-centralized, so there's some organizational improvements we think we're going to make to balance that out. We're looking at doing to the point earlier, we're looking at doing a salary survey to ensure we're doing our best job of recruiting and retaining people in the procurement team. We're looking at purchasing pools as well. So we've got things. It's one of those things where it was in the FY 19-20 budget. So we're really going to get moving in haste when hopefully the budget gets approved next week.
That's a good reminder to all of us to move forward and improve it. So thank you for that. And then finally, Heather, appreciate seeing the progress out there. I know, like all departments, you're short-staffed, and I'm just trying to understand to what extent improvements can be attributed to the use of this technology and perhaps better processes internally versus just the fact that you guys are now using contractors, so you got more folks doing the work. Can you help me understand how you're able to determine that we're actually improving the process?
Sure. When we analyzed those numbers, we related back to the same time in the previous year where we were using contractors at that point. So it was really an apples to apples comparison. Luckily, we had those contractors on last year, so it made an easy comparison and an easy analysis to show that it was the process improvement.
And so that's a roughly 20% improvement in response time. Is that right?
Correct. On the follow-up visits.
Right.
So first visit happens, at least 3 days later we go back out, and that time frame has been shortened 20%. So the follow-up visit where we go to potentially do an enforcement action. Okay,
great. Super helpful. I know that our team has been reaching out to you about other concepts, and I know we can talk more about those offline, but I really appreciate your willingness to lean in on this to see how we can improve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the question of procurement, I keep hearing about this, and I just want to understand with the way the city is set up and the hoops we have to jump through and whatever policies we have in place, if I'm getting emails to my office inviting me to sit through like a sales pitch on helping improve city procurement, which I am, does it even make sense for me to sit through that because of whatever process we have in the city to change these methods?
I know I'm going to regret saying this, but probably the best answer is to refer them to me.
Okay.
And I will manage the process. Obviously, because we have a procurement that's about ready to go out the door, we're going to have to manage that carefully. I'm certainly open to receiving that. I think it'd be best to send it to me, and then we'll handle it appropriately in terms of where we are in a procurement life cycle or otherwise.
Okay, thank you. On the icons, how I know that in the presentation we're doing it. Can you speak a little bit more to that, like how we're deciding on what is the most effective icon for a pothole or whatever that is?
That's a great question. So in the work that Julia and Yura conducted, they created prototypes which are mock-ups of the app, not real versions of the app, that were expressly created to test a specific idea. The idea being that greater use of visual icons and less reliance on text would make the app easier to use for non-English speaking residents. Their research validated that idea. So when we develop My San Jose 2.0, we will be asking the design team, our vendors, to design the app so that it has greater use of icons. Specifically, which icons we'll be using will be a question that will be answered at that time once we've engaged with vendors through the procurement and then the contracting process. And we'll be sure to make sure to include a lot of user research and usability testing in that process so that we are choosing icons and designing icons that are readily understandable to our diverse population.
Great, because I think the icons are the way to go. It'll save us some time translating everything into the many different languages we have in the city. Lastly, on the question of the app and the desktop website, or the phone call or everything, given our limited resources, and I'm not sure if it's the same resources that are being used to build out the app or the desktop or the city website, but do you guys have a professional opinion as to where we should focus? Like, what is the front door? What is the best face we want to put out to users? Do you want to focus on the app? And we know not everybody has a smartphone, but are we getting enough traffic to the website? As in terms of prioritization of resources, where should we be focusing?
That is a terrific question, and indeed, one of the findings from the Code for America Fellowship work is that there is obviously additional overhead in maintaining multiple channels and maintaining very similar but slightly different experiences, both on the web portal as well as the mobile app. As technology advances, there are opportunities for us to find ways to consolidate some of that design and development work. So for example, one of the technologies that we are interested in exploring more for My San Jose 2.0 is known as a progressive web app, which is a web app that actually looks almost identical to a mobile app when viewed on a mobile phone. So that enables more efficiencies in terms of the design and the development. For example, the Twitter progressive web app is indistinguishable almost from the Twitter mobile app. So there are opportunities like that which we would explore in partnership with our vendors, who are really going to be the experts, where we'll be telling them what our goals are and they'll be helping us determine the best implementations.
Okay, we'll ask us if you need direction. But anyways, can I get a motion? Anybody opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Let's move on. Time check. Council member, no, I need to be, the mayor needs to be, and the vice mayor needs to be at VTA aspirationally at 4:30, so.
Right, so we're going to try to move through IPS and Facebook Live as quickly as we can.
Okay.
It's a major shift change.
We may lose quorum around 3:50, but let's try.
Good afternoon, Chair, Mayor, and members of the committee. Rosalind Huey, Director of the Department of Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement. So when we were last before the committee in October of last year, we shared how we took a pause on our integrated permitting system work and called a reset on the project. At that time, we were nearly 2 years behind schedule, had a fractured relationship with the vendor, and no true working software. Since then, we have reset our expectations, we are amending the contract, and we have established a new governance structure and formed a transformation team to lead this work. And I'm glad to report that we are in much better shape now. When we started the integrated permitting system upgrade back in 2016, we approached it as just another software update. But the truth is, it was much, much bigger than that. So we took a pause to reflect and to reset. We now know that this effort is a total transformation across people, process, and technology. I'm pleased to share some of the work of the members of the transformation team, and we have members here today who will present on our work. Matt Lush, who is the Deputy Director of Public Works and is the team's product owner. Joe Dyke, Associate Engineer in Public Works Department. Robert Manford, Deputy Director of Planning. Sylvia Doe, Planning Division Manager, Chief Hector Estrada, our Fire Marshal, and Erica Garafo with the Office of Civic Innovation. So beginning in December of 2018, the team took a brand new approach using a system called Objectives as Measured by Key Results, or OKRs, which was pioneered by Intel and Google. We set 4 high level of objectives to frame our work for the next 12 to 18 months. So the first 2 objectives you see on the screen here focus on solving pain points for our external customers. First, a simple self-serve digital experience, and second, a clear, consistent, effective process. And then the last 2 objectives focus on improving the experience for our internal customers, our staff. The first one is strong collaborating team, and the second one is great internal tools to enable teamwork. The distinguishing factor, and really the hook that gives objectives their effectiveness, are the quarterly key results. They are measurable results broken down into something doable in a quarter that are visible, consistent, and focused. They help tie the tactical work to our overarching vision that are the objectives. Now I'll turn it over to Matt Lush, our transformation team's product owner, to share our results from last quarter's key results.
Good afternoon. With these OKRs, the approach, the results are self-evident. We color them, we put metrics to them, we grade our success, we set our markers and our metrics before we even start the quarter, so we have very clear metrics that we're shooting for our targets. In the 90 days, we accomplished 14 of our 17 targets, with the remaining 3 that were over 50% complete. To highlight a few of them, and I could talk to more in detail if you'd like, but for example, on the top left, the portal roadmap defined. One of the items of the platform before was, what are we doing on our portal? And it was sort of jumbled up. And so we spent the time where we evaluated, reviewed, presented to the executive committee the options and choice set and made a decision. So now we have a path forward that we're implementing this quarter and next. And so you'll see results there soon. Another big one was on adopting Scrum. So what comes out of these key results is our 2-week sprint cycle, and we'll talk more in just a minute about it. But adopting Scrum as our practice, so we have this regular cadence of chewing through things, getting the work done week by week, and these 2-week sprint cycles. And then finally, the CSDC contract reset, where there were some challenges around the contract to try to get it aligned to the work to get delivered. We took this chance during this previous quarter to figure out what that contract looked like, and it'll be before you for decision on the 25th. If you go to the next slide, please. Oh, there you go, got the clicker. One of the things we did is we created a war room space, an area of cubes where people could test together. It gives a little, folks, the team camaraderie, and this is a live shot, not staged, of something actually worked the way they anticipated. The 2 + 2 equaled 4 when they expected it, so it's sort of exciting opportunity. So in using this is also the area where they meet for their daily sprints, discussions as they talk through their issues, and they present them to the group and they test here together. Finally, one of the other key results for this quarter was to pilot with our small cell team electronic plan review, something that will be more broadly developed out through the rest of the development partners. In this siloed fashion, we were able to pilot it fairly quickly and efficiently. We'll be testing this and going forward. And with this small cell team, the reviewing cycles got up to 70 permit reviews per week, a massive improvement that directly ties to the city's goals around the digital inclusion. I'll turn this now over to Joe Dyke from Public Works to walk you through the demo of the GeoCortex software.
Thank you, Matt. So what you're going to be seeing right now is a taped demo of GeoCortex, basically running through a parcel report and a mailing list, as well as some other items. So to start, so when you launch GeoCortex from our permitting system, it establishes a bidirectional information transfer between the two so they can communicate between themselves. Once it loads, it'll center around City Hall. From there, you can search using our geocoder engine for street intersections and other GIS layers. Here you'll see we'll put in a particular street. You'll do the search. You'll see the results. You can click on the result. It'll take you to there. One of the other items that we have are bookmarks, so people can bookmark their project locations on their desktop. And in this case, we're going to go to the parcel report location. And so if a customer comes down to the first floor, if I click on it, go to the first floor, they'll say, hey, what are the characteristics of my site? One of the ways to do it would be just to click on the actual parcel itself. A menu shows up. From there, they can click Run a Report, and you'll see on the left it says Parcel Report. Once you click on the parcel report, it sends information, a request to Amanda, and pulls information. Once it's done generating, you'll see a link on the left. You can download the report, or you can open it in the browser window. And then from there, you'll see the characteristics, the APN, site address, owner, year built, any development permits that were previously on the site, flood zone, geohazard. It'll also show you a location map at the very bottom. They'll show you highlighted the property, as well as the zoning of the property and the surrounding properties as well. The next part of this will be the mailing list. And so just imagine a project comes in near Santana Row. They're about ready to go to director hearing or planning commission, and then they want to generate a mailing list. So what they'll end up doing is clicking on the generate mailing label. They'll have options of choosing parcels, street sections, or street intersections. For planning, they're going to choose parcels pretty much 99% of the time. From there, you'll have different options on how to select the parcels. In this demo, we're going to select multiple points. And so then you just select the parcels that you want, double click. It tells you geometry is captured, you go next. It gives you the option if you want to do some more. So in this case, we're also going to choose a street segment, and then we'll choose a different method of identifying that segment. So we'll choose the rectangle, and then it'll tell you the geometry is captured. You'll click next, and then if that's all that you want, then you'll click on finished. And then from there, you'll identify what the buffer distance that you want. For planning for this type of project would be 1,000 feet. You have other options if you want to do yards or miles, but it's usually in feet. You'll also have the options of owner, occupant, or just owner. For these type of mailing labels, we're just going to want to do owner and occupant. And so when you click next, the system will show you the buffer range, basically from the outline of the properties themselves. And then it again queries information from Amanda. You'll be able to do download mailing labels, basically if you want to just print them and stick them on a envelope. The way planning does it, though, they want the raw data, which will open up into an Excel file. And from there, they're able to sort and see if there's any duplicates, remove duplicates, and then they use the Excel file in order to generate the mailing label from their postcards. And so there they can go through and sort, and that's pretty much the end of the demo. Thank you.
So you can advance to the next slide. So as Joe just described, GeoCortex is a key tool for us that consolidates property information, which previously was resided in various computer applications, actually in paper maps or on microfiche records. So right now, this is an internal software, but our roadmaps includes rolling out a public-facing tool, which will be launched in early next year. So when we look at the benefits of this tool, it's really huge. So staff will now spend 30 seconds to just a minute pulling information on a property for a homeowner when it used to take them up to 45 minutes to an hour. And so then in less than an hour, staff can now produce hundreds of mailing labels for noticing, which used to take them up to 8 hours. So a full working day to produce these mailing labels for just one development application. And I just want to highlight, back in March, there was an audit of development noticing. It was determined that in fiscal year 17-18, our staff actually mailed 150,000 mailing notices for about over 400 projects. So this is just high volume of work that when we see these time saving, it's really huge for our staff, which means they can spend their time doing other work. So we're very, very excited about this tool. We also anticipate better data reliability, which will be invaluable for a variety of purposes, including things like emergency response. So now I'm going to turn it over to Robert Manford, who is going to talk about some of our process improvements regarding CEQA.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll be presenting to you our CEQA improvement plan summarized in 4 bullet points. The first recommendation has to do with the elimination of the firewall between applicants and environmental consultants. With the firewall concept, developers are not allowed to see the SQL analysis or documents that have been prepared for their projects unless and until it goes out for public review. However, they pay for them. So this actually borders on fairness to the developers. They need to get feedback so they can shape their projects and agree to mitigation ahead of time. We get a lot of complaints from developers about this concept. And actually, state law allows the applicants to submit their own documents for staff review and processing. The documents will also have to be reviewed by staff, and it must reflect the independent judgment of staff. The firewall concept is actually predicated on the notion that consultants can be controlled or manipulated by developers. So we have to ensure that the consultants are screened so that they are not controlled by applicants. This brings us to our second recommendation, which has to do with the creation of a pre-qualified list of our consultant pool for SQL analysis. A pre-qualified list will provide us with the option to choose for both the city and also applicants. It will encourage competition for better quality documents. It also provides us the opportunity to share and explore other experiences and innovative problem solving. We also know the best management practices in comparable cities. As we know, the city is growing, and the problems that we face are faced by many other big cities within the states. It will also help us with our workload management and provide accountability on the part of our consultants. I'm happy to announce that an RFQ went out on April 25th, which ended just yesterday, 5th June, and we have 25 responses from 25 consultants throughout the state. Our third recommendation has to do with training of SQL staff with the basics of SQL and advanced SQL concepts. The intent here is to commission a series of SQL workshops for continuing education, staff competency, and skill set development. And we plan to invite nationally recognized industry practitioners to conduct these workshops. We also want all planners to understand SQL as part of the planning process because it's a requirement. And also reduce problems associated with the bifurcation of our SQL review team and then development review team. As it stands, we have two different teams doing SQL and then development review. And if one needs information from the other, it means a project is delayed. We also want to implement a SQL cross-training so that all project managers in the development review team will be able to administer basic SQL assessments. And then the cross-training will also foster review of projects and streamline planning process. I'm also happy to announce that our first training for all planning staff was held on May 2nd, 2019, and a second one for just SQL staff on greenhouse gas emissions analysis was held on June 3rd, just this past Monday. The fourth recommendation has to do with better quality assurance, quality control for a sustainable city. The intent here is to establish a model through the IPS system that we are talking about right now so as to monitor and report on progress of all the three of the above recommendations with an eye towards frequent monitoring of key performance indicators that align with the recommended process improvements. On that note, we'll improve on our internal processes, establish standard work templates for impact analysis and streamlined review for consistency and adequacy of our SQL documents, and also eliminate waste. This concludes my presentation, and I will now turn it over to Sylvia Doe to walk us through some of the process improvements that she's leading. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So one of the common pain points that we hear from customers is that the planning permitting process takes too long. And so for the past couple of months, we've been focusing on how to improve that and how to provide upfront support to our customers to make them more successful in our process. So our goal has been to have customers submit a complete application for the first time, and thereby reducing the rounds of review and overall review time. We've been doing a couple of things to help get towards this goal, one of which is looking internally to refine our minimum application submittal checklist so that we really focus on what is the bare minimum information that we need to begin reviewing a project. Secondly, we've changed our one of our procedures in providing more upfront customer service. So right now, customers book an appointment, and we've recently started contacting our customers 2 weeks prior to their appointment so that we can, one, confirm that they're going to be ready for the appointment, and then 2, also walking them through what our minimum submittal requirements are, so that when they arrive on their appointment, hopefully they have everything that is needed for us to accept the application. Secondly, at the appointment itself, we have a more enhanced customer service provided. Previously, it was only planning staff that was assisting with the intake process. Now we also have a collaboration with our Public Works Department, where we have Public Works staff help evaluate for the minimum requirements that they need for stormwater review. Third, since then, we've been tracking data to find out what have been reasons for incomplete application submittals so that we can better improve the process over time. So for the month of May, we've had 58 application appointments available, and of the 58, only 6 have resulted in incomplete applications. So that represents 90% of our customers being successful with the complete application. And for the 10% that haven't, we've gone back and assessed what the reasons were why they weren't able to submit a complete application. So for example, wet signatures is a common one. So we went back and looked at all of our applications and updated them to make it very clear that that's what we need, is a wet signature. And then secondly, related to that goal is overall we've achieved for the month of May a 100% application completeness rate, meaning that we've kind of really held the line at application intake to ensure that only complete applications are being submitted. So from here, we'll continue to work upon assessing what we can better do to serve our customers and increase their turnaround time for their projects. Thank you.
So we're more than about halfway through our second quarter's key results. Looking forward to sharing these with the ad hoc committee in August. What you'll notice about the current quarter's key results is that we're much more focused on quantitative results. We're establishing metrics and baseline data for our online user experience. We're setting goals for completeness and adopting these new applications that were pushed out in the first quarter. We're helping our staff to understand and track. We're improving the time tracking, and we can better account for the true costs of the application processing. We're also planning to go before council, as I noted, on June 25th with a contract amendment.
So in closing, I really just want to reflect on the value of OKRs and how what they've demonstrated for our team, and really it's just an issue of focus. So OKRs focus the team on the vital few measurable accomplishments and holds us accountable to our commitments. And we found that OKRs do really 4 things for us very well. So first, they drive a higher say-do ratio by actually chunking out and measuring a very discrete set of results that are clear to everyone, so to everyone on the team. Secondly, they create strategic alignment by using the same language and approach from the strategic to the day-to-day work, and that's across all departmental divisions. Thirdly, OKRs simplify and clarify the work so that staff can say no to the busy work and yes to the right work. And then lastly, they create space for debate on what should be done and how we know that we will get there, and actually forcing a leadership direction instead of us constantly turning our wheels. And also, I just really want to acknowledge that we have multiple staff across the development services partners who are working on this effort, many people, many of whom are here in the audience today, and we know that this is truly a team effort and look forward to continuing on. So with that, we're glad to share this update with the committee and are available for any questions you have.
First, we'll go to public comment. What item number are we on? We're on number 4. Okay. Mr. Beekman, welcome back.
Hi, thanks a lot. Yeah, this is like one of the big ones in life. So yeah, I just felt I should come up here and just note that and just make my presence felt. I've been here for 4 or 5 years now, so you know the CEQA, I don't know, everyone has been talking, it's been time to streamline it, and you know, I was happy with some of the things that it can do, and I hope that can always be remembered. And, you know, good luck in this process. I will, as the entire community, will really, I think this will be a very interesting development for all of us. And so thank you. It's interesting that you brought it to this space to note that as well. So thank you, and good luck on how, as a whole community, we can talk about this issue. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Jimenez.
I was just wondering, can someone remind me what OKR stands for again?
Objectives and key results.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was trying to remember that. So thank you for that. I was writing it down and I realized I didn't remember. The other thing, I guess what I was wondering is just not to, I guess it brings up other issues or other thoughts that I'll address at a different place, but the geocortex demo, I found it interesting. Where did that get the data from? Where I think the bi-directional something or other, I was trying to remember exactly what you said, sort of bringing together.
So it establishes a connection between like an Amanda session ID, and then basically when you click on it, it runs like a SQL statement, like a statement that then goes back to Amanda to look at the particular property and some information in information fields to kind of pass back into a report that you end up seeing.
Thank you, and I certainly appreciate the reduction in time that was shown. I think it's a big deal. But one of the things that came to mind as you were going through that is, don't, you know, just in a different role that I have, I know sometimes like title companies in real estate, in the real estate industries, title companies already have a lot of this data. I don't know if this is for properties, APN numbers and other such things. I'm wondering, couldn't we easy enough just go to the county, and I know we don't always have a good relationship with them, but can we just access that data elsewhere and not have to develop something on our own to try to?
So
I don't know if that makes sense.
Much of the data so the data in Amanda is coming from multiple sources. It is pulling information from the county. They might not, a title company might or might not have whether there was a building permit already pulled on a parcel or not. And so they usually have just attributes about that particular APN.
Right.
Some of which is pulled from a county, but also those title companies often have proprietary systems that don't come for free. And so you're either paying for that service itself, and so this is kind of a culture to exactly what our staff needs as far as pulling data from multiple data sources, our work that we've done with that particular property, and then going forward.
Okay, and then one of the things that came to mind is obviously the type of data, right? I'm sure some of these other sources don't necessarily provide some of the things that we're looking for, which I can appreciate.
And just real quick, also, this is just one report that we've configured right now. We can create multiple different reports as we go along that can help staff if there's other, avenues that can reduce, the staff time to get information or things that the customers are looking for.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right. I'm glad to hear the feedback on OKRs. I think that's the latest fad. I'd be curious to know why we used OKRs and not like MBOs, management by objectives, or SMART goals, specific, measurable, actionable, relatable, and time-bound, KPIs, big, hairy, audacious goals. There's a whole... Anyways, never mind. All right. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Please continue on.
So we're doing a quick staff change for our final report. I'm going to stay here hidden in the back of the room because I know we're running short on time. So last but not least, the communications office and the mayor's office are here to present the results of this past year's work on exploring different approaches to drive community engagement, and we'll detail the results and recommendations in today's presentation. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to Shireen Santosham.
Thanks so much. Shireen Santosham, Chief Innovation Officer for the Mayor. I know we're extremely short on time, so I won't do a large preamble. I would just like to thank Rosario and her team for taking the time to work on this project and for her leadership. Social media has really changed the way that we interact and communicate at city halls across the country. are hesitant to embrace these new technologies because they're complex to implement, especially under current legal regimes. And, that's not the case here. And I really want to thank also Denzel Eden on my team, who is a Harvard Business School fellow and will be leaving us here. So this is in about 2 weeks. And so we're very grateful for her work this year.
Thanks, Shireen. Rosario Navas, Director of Communication. So as Shireen said, this is an interesting time for social media. We're also at a time in history where many cities, including San Jose, are looking at how to increase public participation in local government. And fortunately, with advances in technology, we're able to think beyond traditional means for civic engagement, which historically has included public hearings, public meetings, or in-person commenting at a city council or committee meeting. Here in San Jose, we are exploring civic engagement and how to improve it on 2 fronts, in person and digitally. And so today we're talking about digitally. And we have been fortunate to have Denzel and Henry Sy before her help the city advance its research into better ways to increase civic engagement. So I also want to recognize and thank Denzel as well as Craig Judson on my team for their contributions to this project.
Thank you, Rosario and Shireen, and thank you, Vice Mayor and council members, for taking the time to hear our update today. I'm wrapping up my fellowship with the city, but I'm very excited that our team was able to bring this pilot to a successful conclusion and that we're able to share our results with you all today. This work began with a 2017 memorandum about 3 possible civic engagement methods. 1, activating comment on Granicus, the platform that we use, live streaming to multiple platforms, and finally experimenting with new methods and tools of civic engagement. And the ultimate goal of all of this was to report back to council with findings before recommending expansion to other council committees and full city council. So I'll dive deeper into each of these civic engagement methods that we explored. But first, I just want to quickly take a moment to share how this has been the conclusion of a successful iteration and experimentation over the last 2 years. Our team has coordinated and collaborated and reached some great conclusions and a wonderful path forward that I'm excited to share with you today. So the first aspect of this work began with exploring the full potential of Granicus and its feature set. So we specifically tested out e-comment, which is a low-cost solution, only $5,400 annually, but its comments are sent directly to city council members and city staff right before a meeting takes place. Right now, we only have a small number of users, but the users that we have very high usage. Over the 120 e-comments made by 30 users over 44 meetings. So it's exciting. There's a lot of really high impact potential here, but right now it's not well promoted as a feature or discoverable. This is on the right, you can see what it looks like. Residents can, on specific agenda items, write their comments, give their feedback, and even select a position of opposition, neutral, or support. And that transparency and access from residents is great. And so we definitely want to continue to promote this and enable this for our residents. The second aspect of our work with this project was to live stream to multiple platforms. So as you've heard last November, a similar update, we've done 2 mini pilots around live streaming. One where we only streamed 4 meetings on Facebook alone, 2 meetings on YouTube alone, and then 2 meetings on YouTube and Facebook. So we've obviously experimented with what is the best social media mix for the city. And we've promoted these meetings through Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You might be wondering, why did we add YouTube? And I want to clarify that YouTube is more than a social media platform. It's really a video and search platform. Right now, predictions show that the internet will be pretty much video, 82% shortly. And right now, almost 192 million Americans go and watch online video. And it turns out from the research that YouTube has been collecting around their platform, it is where Americans go to watch sports, politics, and anything related to entertainment or education or inspiration. And so this is where Americans are moving to get their news and politics. And so we want to be on top of that. In fact, the House of Representatives has been mandated to live stream all of their committee meetings on YouTube for the last 3 years. So it makes sense that we are experimenting with this platform. I want to clarify that both platforms, Facebook and YouTube, measure a successful video very differently. So for Facebook, a lot of its measurement of success comes from a post, and it doesn't really care what the content of that post is, and it doesn't care if that post is a video that was live streamed on Facebook or if it's a video that's on YouTube. Instead, they're trying to measure the likes, comments, and the followers that are increased with every post that's made. In contrast, YouTube really cares about how much time is spent watching videos on the platform and how many views a video gets specifically, and then how often a video ends up coming up in their search results. And finally, for both of them, they share in that they're always interested in how many people a post is reached by and how many followers a specific organization has on each platform. So I just wanted to show that as a context for how we've evaluated our success. I also want to add on, what does the city gain from each platform? So from Facebook, we have great discoverability with residents, and we are able to see what conversations residents are able to have resident to resident. Right now on Facebook, our communications department and the city has spent a lot of time investing in a community. So right now we have almost more than 18,000 people following our Facebook page, which is great. In contrast, on YouTube, we only have 50 subscribers, and it's because we just haven't invested the time or energy into this platform, even though it's extremely important. Another great thing about YouTube is that it provides a great record-keeping source for the city, and it's optimized for video presence. And so we're getting very different benefits from both platforms, but we should be leveraging both. And again, common gains for us is really creating this follower community and having this reach across not only in San Jose, but also the country. So just to quickly show the differences in what each platform looks like, here's Facebook and what our video posts look like. Again, you can see Facebook really is emphasizing being able to like and share and having resident conversations. But from the posts that we're getting from residents, they're very excited to see us publishing this in our Facebook page. In contrast, YouTube is very much around the video content and what context and content it has. And so here you can see our entire Smart Cities and Service Improvements Committee playlist. And so even though we're not necessarily live streaming all of these meetings on YouTube, we can create an entire record-keeping archive there. So it makes it easy for new residents to come and find the context of these meetings. Here are the results that we've seen over all of the videos that have been live streamed and uploaded to all of these platforms. So our city website, or Granicus, is where we've always posted these videos. You can see on average our Facebook reach is 75 times that of Granicus, which is a significant factor. You can see that Facebook has a large range in its reach, and that has to do with our inconsistent marketing and a lot of the novelty factor when we first started live streaming on Facebook. But despite that, the average reach is significantly higher than that of Granicus. But Facebook is really focused on promotion and discoverability, and it doesn't really care if the video is actually live streamed on Facebook. And so I really want to emphasize that we can get benefits from both platforms. So we can get the live streaming benefits from YouTube and having that record keeping there, but then continue to promote and provide discoverability through Facebook. Now I'm going to transition into our exploration of new tools. So we looked into how AI technology is changing video consumption today. So you might remember when we started uploading these videos to Box and trying to experiment with AI skills, trying to auto-generate video clips based off who was speaking and facial recognition, also trying to create a AI-generated transcript, and also finding auto-generated keywords. So this is what Box skills look like. This was a great first step in experimenting with this technology. But you can see in the screenshot on the right that the transcript that is AI-generated using Box is not very accurate. But it was our first foray into this world. And from there, we ended up actually trying out another platform, Threadio, where its AI skills for creating a AI-generated transcript was much better. It was able to find better keywords. It allowed you to search based off what was spoken in a meeting. But then we compared this back to what we have right now with Granicus. And right now we use human-generated transcripts for all of the meetings that we have and upload that into Granicus. So even though they're not AI-generated, the actual searchability provided by the Granicus platform is equivalent to that of what was provided by Box and Threadio. Right now, you can search something by its keyword like Box Skills, and you can see where in these different meetings it has come up. And if you click on one of these links, it'll take you exactly to the point in the meeting where the conversation was taking place. And so right now, the tools that are provided by AI Skills aren't really competing with our human-generated skill set, but it was an interesting exploration to what is out there, and we'll continue to monitor the progress that AI is making and see if there are ways that it can complement what we're doing here at the city. Now, I will transition it back to Rosario for our final recommendations, but before I do, I really want to thank Craig Jetson for all his work. He's championed all aspects of this project and is a large part of the reason that we are going to be able to implement our final recommendations today.
Thank you, Denzel.
Sorry.
So bottom line, we're recommending that we expand live streaming on YouTube, and that would include all council and council committee meetings. So I think that's a really great step forward in making this content available to residents in a different way and in a way that they're used to. We're also recommending to continue to enable e-comment and promote it better and more. We will also monitor any new features that Granicus develops over the years. We will commit to promote the YouTube live stream link in advance of all meetings on all of our social media outlets. So at minimum, Facebook, as Denzel recommends, especially with the discoverability aspect. And then we'll also promote the associated e-comment agenda link to encourage people to submit comments through e-comment. We are going to continue to monitor the staff time and resource impact. As Denzel mentioned, Craig has been a critical partner in this effort. We do want to monitor his staff time and develop and evaluate to see if there's any other opportunities to bring additional resources on. I do want to mention at this time, I know that Denzel shared the Facebook community's followers and our YouTube followers. You know, a lot of that reach and the following in the community that we've built has just been organic over time. The city does not actually have a full-time social media community manager or team, which is very surprising, I think, for a city our size and for an organization our size. I think as we continue to build our communities online, whether it's our Twitter or Facebook or grow our YouTube following, I do recommend that the city reevaluate that and look at adding resources to my team so that we can be able to just do more and amplify all of the department's efforts on social media. And then we are, as Denzel mentioned, not recommending to invest further time in the use of Box Skills, Threadio, or other similar platforms. We think that Granicus offers what we need, and so we think we should just continue with them at this time. And with that, we can take any questions. Thank you.
Let's go to public comment real quick. Mr. Beekman.
Hi, thank you. I'm very sorry that the Granicus e-comment idea I think is a great idea, and I thought that would naturally just, you know, like the same way people leave their comments on the YouTube, I just assumed people would be e-commenting all the time. And why that's not happening, I do not know. And, you know, I've added a few sometimes, and, you know, I'm hurt. But I'm hopeful that, you know, as a community, people will want to use that, that's available to them. I mean, it's difficult sometimes to be up here and speak, and to use that as a resource for people. You know, it's a very nice resource. It's like, you know, simple in how it could work well. And you know, that's like the way I think in life, and for the fact that it's not being used, taken advantage of, and being used and as a tool and for the community, for everybody, you know, it surprises me, and it shows my own lack in life, I guess. So, but you know, good luck in the efforts to continue, and I really strongly emphasize, if I can, to try to emphasize that you know, the e-comment is a good thing, or whatever the word besides emphasize, to just offer, to just describe, to love. and hopefully, it is a real good outlet for people. I think it could be. And good luck with the other YouTube stuff. With 10 seconds in my open forum, I'm going to want to talk about how, public policy can be a way to talk more about civic engagement, good public policy. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor Jones.
Yes, first of all, Denzel, I want to thank you for all your hard work, and I apologize that we had to kind of rush through the presentation, but we have to run to a VTA meeting. But I want to acknowledge the hard work, and I have a million questions, and I'm not going to be able to get them all out. But I did have a quick question on the e-comments. Is there an expectation from the people that post those comments that there's some action that takes place in terms of responding to or following up on their comments?
So I believe their only expectation is that the committee members will read their comment before the meeting begins so that they have that access.
Okay. I don't know if that's a realistic expectation, but it's good to know that they have it. And then the second question is, do we have any data on views and reach from when I was the chair of this committee versus Councilmember Depp?
I'm sure we can get that for you.
Okay, because I have a feeling that the amount of views and have really gone down since he's taken over. So.
Only because we stopped doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is great. I'm happy that we're moving in this direction. I would say it's long overdue, and I'm thankful to the team for unpacking how many resources it takes to actually do this. From the outside world, like, why aren't we on YouTube? Why aren't we on Facebook? It's just so obvious, so simple. But there are all these things like the Brown Acts and open government rules and transparency, and not to mention staff time that goes into it. So it's not that we're unable. There's hurdles to jump through. So thank you to Rosario, all of you, the team. Can I get a motion? Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. And now on to open forum.
I wanted to comment on the good of a good open public policy. You talked about that in the privacy issues and with this last issue. If you have a good public policy, people want to participate more. And, I feel the privacy policy is going to need some work. And I've talked about this at Rules and Open Government yesterday, that, I'm going to spend this month at least, you need to learn how to refresh your ideas with what you're doing with transparency with the public and with its openness. And, you tried to speak about it today. It was nicely said it's a work in progress, and, what we're doing, the work that we're doing, and with technology itself, things can adjust quickly, and we have to be prepared to learn to know how to make those adjustments. And that's important in the work that we're doing, and I think the adjustments really stress how we can shift towards a more openness and clearness with the everyday public, and the public can become more engaged themselves to talk to you as well. I mean, to be prepared for that is just, that's what I've been talking about all this time, with a good guideline process, a good organizational process, with the Surveillance and Technology Ordinance, can just do wonders, I think. It really just creates a really good forum for all of us to have that important dialogue, how to talk better with each other. You weren't doing that today. You've lacked that, and it's sad. Because I hope you guys, whatever you have to work with the County of Santa Clara, doesn't have to be a serious competition. And we can take their good work and learn to integrate that into what we do here. And in the future, there's going to have to be the thought of the idea of maybe a public board, a community board, to look into questions of technology. And all this we can talk about in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.